Furries are at it once again, and by it, let's just say complaining about the price of art. Furries, despite having a reputation as being a rich fandom, love to complain about the price of art. It happens all the time, and recently the controversy has popped up back again. But this time it's centered on an artist who I already admired and followed, so I was pretty much in the know as soon as it happened, so I decided to make a video discussing these complaints of the furries on art prices. On a perfectly normal January day, a beloved artist, Ramahiro, a furry artist with almost 57,000 followers, posted another opening of their commissions. This was entirely normal. This artist is talented and experienced and completes many orders a year. But for some reason, this time their commission tweet blew up, and not in the good way. People began to complain that the lowest price they could pay for one of these commissions was $300 for an unshaded headshot, and these commissions could quickly get up to thousands of dollars depending on how large you wanted something like a reference sheet. And the fandom exploded. The furries were angry. Plenty of furries said that their art wasn't worth that much, that no art was worth that much, suggesting that artists were overestimating their worth and that they could just go to a cheaper artist. Now, here was my tweet in response to this whole thing, but this whole thing had me steamed up enough that I needed to make a whole video on it to deliver some key points about this controversy. My first point is to address the comments that the art isn't worth the price. Art is subjective. It's one of the most subjective things out there. Plenty of comments were saying that the art wasn't worth the price, but I guess it's a good thing that not everyone has the same eyes, because Ramahiro's buyers seem incredibly pleased with their art. So pleased, in fact, that they're willing to pay hundreds of dollars. Not everyone has to like this artist's art style or how they do their rendering or whatever else you may have a problem with, and not everyone has to think that it's worth the price that the artist has put on it. But clearly, some people do, and they like it enough to pay for it. And so I don't understand why everyone needs to have the same value of art as these commenters do who don't think it's worth enough. Not everyone has the same opinions about art style and art quality, and that's okay, and there's no reason to try to force other people to think the same way you do. My second and biggest point is that artists have this little thing called freedom. You cannot force anyone to draw for you. Do you hear that? You cannot force someone to spend their time and use their hands to draw for you. If an artist does not want to draw for someone else for less than $300, then they don't have to. You cannot attack them, bully them, or force them to draw for $20 or $100 or even $299. Which brings me to this comment, which is what angered me the most. There is no policing of artists' prices, because that term implies that there should be an accepted way to force an artist's prices to stay underneath a certain amount, and consequences for the artist should they not comply. The only way I can think of enforcing this is rampant bullying, which is bad. And by the way, literally no one will ever convince me that that's not bad. Please look at me in my face and tell me that you're a good person for bullying someone because they won't draw for you for a cheaper price. Yeah, that sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? And then, of course, there will always be people who will try to justify their anger towards something that they don't like by accusing the other party of being immoral. And this was done by complaining that anyone who buys from an expensive artist is being taken advantage of or even scammed. And to that I say, how? Literally, how? The buyer acknowledges the price, understands what they will receive and when for that price, and pays the artist. The artist isn't holding the buyer at gunpoint or taking payment and not receiving the agreed upon product. How is the buyer being taken advantage of? Do they just think that all buyers with expensive tastes are stupid little babies who can't think for themselves and must be being manipulated if they choose to spend their money on an expensive artist? You may argue, well, yeah, Ramahiro could charge less. And you're right, they could. But why would they? If somebody is fully willing to pay me hundreds of dollars for my time in art, I wouldn't lower that price at all. That's bills getting paid right there. Commissions are not charity. Just because I can draw for cheap doesn't mean that I have to. There's no moral failing for making money from a skill that you also enjoy. And finally, the last comment I have about all of this is, who cares? Why did they care? Why did they care enough to comment any of this? Not only do you not need art of your coy wolf persona in order to stay alive, genuinely who cares that an artist is getting business that you deem to be too expensive? The craziest part of this were the comments like this, the comments that assume that Ramahiro wasn't getting commissions because of their prices and that they don't understand business, which is not true. Now, obviously, I don't have an exact count of how many Ramahiro commissions are put out a year, but they are constantly closing and opening slots again, which tells us that they are getting enough commissions to have to close them before reopening. They're clearly doing just fine, but tell me again how they're failing as a business. In fact, they even released this tweet that explains that they used to do art at a cheaper price and they got so many commissions that they were burned out and had to close them for a longer period of time. They rose their prices and were being paid more fairly for their time and work while getting less clients that they could in fact manage. It seems like that they are doing just fine making a living off of their art, which they deserve to do. Not everybody has to have a quote-unquote standard job in order to pay their bills. Overall, I think this outrage stems from jealousy, both from an inability to afford this art as well as the inability to sell their own art for that much. I understand how that jealousy feels. I mean, I wish I could sell my art for hundreds of dollars, but what I don't understand is the need to lash out about it. Everyone in these negative comments sounds miserable, jealous, and mad at the world that this is not their situation, and it's really not a good look. If you're going to be jealous and seething, do it quietly. And to Ramahiro, I'm sorry that you had to deal with this in the first place. Haters will always try to tear down people more successful than them, and honestly, I'm glad that you can sell your art for that much and live off of it. It's a dream for many artists, and it's an inspiration to see an artist who has been able to complete that. Remember, everybody, art is a luxury. You do not have to have it, you are not entitled to it, but there is also nothing wrong with not being able to afford a particular artist's prices, and that does not make an artist classist for pricing their work at a price that you cannot afford. You can always shop around and find a cheaper artist to provide you just as good work. With that, stay furry, everybody.